This show has been hosted and brought to you by Jumbled Radio Online. You can listen to the show and a variety of other shows on demand on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, and Podbean. Just search up Jumbled Radio Online on the respective website and you should be able to find it. There may be some harsh language and exploratory themes in the coming cast. Now, off to your host. Welcome back to another episode of Overanalyzing a Thing. I'm your host, Julian Narahana. Thank you so much, Jumbled Radio Online, for hosting this show. Today, we are going to be exploring all the games that I've played so far throughout the year. I have specific episodes for specific games, which is quite nice because some games hit harder than others, and this is essentially going to be the episode where I talk about the games that didn't hit as much or don't have as much thought put into it. I'm probably going to do another one of these at the end of the year when I have finished these games. So far, this is the first half of the games that I've played so far that don't deserve an episode or don't have enough things to write about for an episode. At the moment, I have played about 14 games this year, ranging from a bunch of different, genres and categories, etc. I've put in a lot of hours into some games and very minuscule hours into others, but today we're only going to be talking about the games that I have finished. And if you are interested, I'm going to give you a score for the game that I gave out of 10, and these are legitimate scores that I had to think of. Most of these games I've enjoyed, so if I enjoy a game and I think it's good, it's a 5. If I enjoy a game and I think it's really, really, if I love a game hardcore, it'll get a 10. It might be because of past experiences with the franchise and other things like that. It could just be me being weird. I'm not a games journalist. I'm not the sayer of what's a good game or what's not. This is all opinion based, and this is all how I feel. You will see that some genres will stick and will become my favorite thing, but others aren't as good. I could do a review for last year's games, the 12 games that I played through last year or finished last year. I need to create a list as well of games that I have not finished, because there's a bunch of games that I've started but I just couldn't be bothered finishing because they're not as fun as I thought they would have been. I'm going to try to keep spoilers to a minimum. I will warn you if a spoiler will be coming up. I'll tell you how long I'm going to be talking about the spoiler for, so be wary about that, be ready about that. And I guess we can begin. The first game I played this year, I was trying to aim for a game, at least one game a month, because I have some long PlayStation 4 games that I like to play and a couple on my laptop. My laptop is really old and really poor, that's why I can't play a lot of good games on Steam or wherever. Most of my gaming occurs on the PlayStation, so a lot of these games, 90% of these games, are going to be coming from the PS4. So in January, I played Wolfenstein 2. Here's what I wrote for it. The Adventures of Daddy Blazkowicz. Wow, okay, restart. The Adventures of Daddy Blazkowicz was a stellar mix of FPS, mindless killing, and nice storytelling with beautiful graphics. Wolfenstein 2 can just as easily be a movie than a video game, but thank God it's a game, because I love being BJ and playing as him. Cool. Good writing. The family vibe in the submarine was dope, the character development from the last game felt great, and our choices from the last game affected this one in terms of characters involved, and that was actually a very nice touch. Again, I played it mindlessly, and I love the story. If it's hella cheap, you should go ahead and buy it. The gunplay and the graphics made it feel very satisfying to plow through, and it didn't make me feel dizzy or nauseous at all. There are some games that do make me feel dizzy and nauseous in terms of how they treat the motion blur in FPSs. I can't remember a certain game that fucked me up for motion blur. I think Shenmue was a game that fucked me up for motion blur, but that wasn't even FPS. You get what you pay for, nothing extremely innovative, just an extremely well-polished and dope experience. It took me about 20 hours to complete the main story. I gave it a 5 out of 10. Good game, easy enough to take in. It was a very good step up from Wolfenstein 1, or the first Wolfenstein, or Wolfenstein New Order, in the PlayStation 4 series, in the new generation of consoles. I love the character development for Blazkowicz. Very good, very nice. I love the idea of having a different timeline world where the Nazis have taken over the world, and just having the experience of being a militia group fighting for America, essentially. That was a cool vibe. There was a lot of good elements in the game that made you just feel like a part of an action movie, which was very nice. Not, it didn't like hit me strong in terms of the storytelling and whatnot, but I enjoyed it thoroughly, and I actually loved to play it. I loved every moment that I was playing the game, just not like a full impact that would get me, right? Um, so yeah, 5 out of 10, 20 hours. I played Yakuza 0, but that's going to have its own episode. That should be interesting. I have a lot to talk about for the Yakuza series, so we'll go through that. I'll give you the score. Yakuza 0, I played for 150 hours in February. I played a lot of that game. And because the game is an action adventure beat 'em up, it's an open world as well, or like kind of a sandbox with a bunch of things to do inside the game. I gave it 10 out of 10. I loved it. I love the character. If you are looking to get into the Yakuza series or have seen a Yakuza game like anywhere, Zero is probably the best one to get into because there are remakes and remasters coming out of the older Yakuza games. Yakuza 6 or 7 or something just released. And now knowing what I know, I'm very excited to start playing the old Yakuza games. So just, yeah, 10 out of 10, 150 hours. After that, I played Crash Bandicoot 1. Not much to say. It's a classic Crash Bandicoot game, not much to talk about here. Pretty easy to finish if you just want to go through the story. If you want to get 100% in the game, I think it'll be easy, just a bit time consuming. It takes time to get good, but it's going to be worth it if you love your classic platformers. 12 hours ish. I took a while because it was my first Crash experience since the PlayStation 1, since like back in the Philippines when I was trying to figure out how to jump in time. Solid experience, 5 out of 10 in my perspective. It was a good game. I enjoyed myself. I didn't hate anything of it. No qualms in terms of how I felt with the game. Very good, very exciting, very fun. But it's a Crash game. Like you expect. I got what I expected through the Crash game, and it was done very well for a Crash game. I'm not the type of guy to 100% a game unless I absolutely love it. Hence why Yakuza 0 is 150 hours, because I was trying to complete it. Haven't completed it fully yet. There's a lot of things. I haven't learned to play Mahjong, okay? But Crash Bandicoot, very good, very fun. This was part of the Insane trilogy. You'll hear the other ones come up soon, because I did not play them all at once. I played like games in between. The game in between Crash Bandicoot 1 and 2 was God of War 4. Okay, this is quite long. The paragraph that I have for this is long, and I have a bunch of things to say for it. So, here we go. I was kind of disappointed with the game. The story was good. The character development of Kratos was good. I loved Atreus, and the whole parent-child story gets me. It felt like The Last of Us, but with Norse gods and Kratos, which was good. I was just really disappointed with the lack of giant fights. The dragon fight was the best fight of the game visually, and the final fight just kind of fell flat, in my opinion. I know there's a setup for the next game, but this was the same feeling you get in a movie where they're secretly planning sequels, or even 3 parts, and you're just wanting to get more in terms of the game's narrative. Maybe my expectation for a giant fight was too much because, I just have weird expectations like that. But it's a God of War game. There should be a nice giant fight at the end of the game that can still be emotionally powerful, especially with the direction that the writers took for this one. It was a dope experience, though. To the regular gamer, it would be a top-notch experience. The lack of loading screens, being hidden by moving through a door or traveling through the portals, which was really nice. The fighting felt great, and the upgrading system was nice. It was smooth and didn't really hinder anything. I liked the dress-up part because each armor had its own look and it was it was very beautiful to see. So you can just kind of pick and choose unless you want to have the best armor. Seeing Kratos develop throughout the game into a humbled father was really cool too. I just wanted more at the end of the game. And if the episodic... What? Oh, okay. I just wanted more at the end of the game, and if the episodic theory of memory says anything about that, a bad ending or a disappointing ending really harms the memory of a game, even though all the hours leading up to the ending was dope. 30 hours, 6 out of 10. Yeah, I was disappointed with this game. There was a lot that I was really expecting in terms of a God of War. I haven't finished a God of War game before. I've started them most on the PSP, or I've borrowed a God of War game, and I've enjoyed the really gigantic fights. I was just expecting a lot for that end. Not spoiling who the fight was or what against the end, but that fight at the end just felt really meh. It felt like the penultimate fight, which was crazy to me because in terms of people playing the way that I do, which is just story-based sometimes, having that as the final fight really fell flat, and it wasn't as good as I was expecting it. So it just made everything leading up to it feel empty, kind of like a letdown. Like the game itself was very good, and the story and the way it was developed was very good, and the fact that the entire story like occurs in one day in world, that was amazing. But I needed a big fight at the end. I needed something God of War at the end to make me feel it. Maybe it's just a new direction, which is like I can't argue of it being a bad idea. It's just it fell flat, man. It fell flat. Then I played Crash 2. Here's what I wrote. Not long at all. It pretty much gets the same score as the first game. Nice and fun if you like platformers. I just used the game to play for fun and to listen to YouTube videos at the same time. Let me say that again because I know I stumbled. I just used the game to play. Holy crap! I just used the game to play for fun and to listen to YouTube videos at the same time. 10 hours, 5 out of 10. Yeah, it was a Crash game. What more can I say? Platformers. Excuse me. Really fun. Not too much to complain about. Not too much to praise in terms of it. So each of these games I've played in each month. Wolfenstein 2 was in January. Yakuza 0 was in February. March was Crash 1. And God of War was about April, and that's when I tore my ACL. And I was, bogged down. So God of War, and these games onward, feel really recent to me because these are the games that I played during my lead up to surgery and after surgery. So there's a lot of recent memory here that just makes me feel like these games have had an impact on me in terms of life and how I'm putting my episodes in life into chapters. That's nothing against the games or about reviewing the games. It's just a little thought that goes into it. And it actually leads up to this game. The next game I finished after Crash Bandicoot 2 was Overcooked, the first game. Because I was in surgery, because I just came out of surgery, and because I didn't think about it soon enough, I didn't move the PlayStation to the living room. I was living in the living room for about a whole month because that's the comfiest place I could lift my leg. I don't have to sleep underneath my bunk, and there was a TV there, and I had food accessible, which was nice. So that's where I was located, and because of that, I used my brother's Switch. Not my Switch, it's my brother's Switch. And I just played these games. I was gonna play Breath of the Wild, I just never felt the need to. For some reason, I put that off really hard. So when I get to playing that game, you'll hear about it for sure. So instead, I just had friends over who I love so much because they came over at literally my time of need in terms of how I was physically doing and mentally doing, which was nice. So we just decided to play Overcooked. I had them play the story with me. There's only really one thing to do in terms of finishing all the levels and doing all the stuff. Here's what I wrote: great management game with friends, coupled with nice visuals and fucking cute music. Good to have and play when you're fresh out of surgery and still want to have fun with friends who come over to check up on you. Really hard and really bad to complete, especially that last level. So yeah, I didn't have my friends over 24/7, and because I was in the living room, my parents, when they came home, used it, and I couldn't really play with my brothers. So I did play a bunch of levels by myself, which was not boring. It was really fun and really challenging mentally to micromanage everything. But that last level, when you're trying to do all of the dishes that they've taught you how to make in the game, as well as dealing with all the BS that's flying through, not fun. And it kind of chopped down the score for me because, again, I had a hard time and it wasn't it didn't feel good for a one player experience. That's not how the game is supposed to be played. It's a multiplayer game, right? 4 players max. Best way to play it is 4 players. So it's kind of bad for me to score the way that I do, or the way that I initially wanted to score it. So it took about 10 hours to complete because I had to wait for friends to come through and relearn the game, etc. And I think that last level took me about 2 hours to complete by myself. Final score 5 out of 10. I had a good time. Not the best time, not the worst time. Could have given it a 4, but I actually did want to give it a 4, but I played it single player, which you're not really supposed to be. Like, it's not how the way the game is supposed to be played, which is how I feel about it. That's why I tried to give the score a decent score. So, most of these games so far, middle of the rank, kind of like average. Crash Bandicoot 3. This one I actually enjoyed a lot more because there was a lot more variety in the levels. The only difference was this is me reading what I wrote. The only difference was the level varieties, which was a nice new touch. Less levels, but a cleaner game overall. The driving part or the motorcycle bit was super dope. But overall, it's the same Crash platformer that you know and love. It took me 8 hours to complete because I think at that time I was getting really good at Crash games, so it just felt easier to traverse and know how to traverse through the world. 5 out of 10. Basic enough. It's a Crash game, and the variety of levels didn't give me enough mental thing to push it, right? To push it to a higher thing. So I think it's a good game. It's a very good game. Just 5 out of 10. It's a good Crash game. And here we go. We're going to start getting into some longer things. This is probably going to be the chunk of the podcast. I played maybe I should do a Shenmue cast all by its own. I probably will. Yeah, okay, we're going to skip over Shenmue 1 and 2. I wrote quite a bit from it, and I have a lot of thoughts in terms of how I feel about the game. It's a very old game, remastered for the PlayStation 4, and it was an experience. It was an experience. So we'll actually let's write that down right now. Shenmue cast. In terms of like initial thoughts of the game, if you wanna Shenmue cast thoughts and prayers. Initial thoughts of the game. It's a good game. I would say it's a good game, but there's like a way that you would have to play the game in order to complete the game, right? And that's also going to jump into another topic that I'm thinking about for the future, because I finished a game recently as well. So Shenmue cast. Perfect. Cool. Not gonna give you the score for that. Well, actually, no. I gave you the Yakuza score, so I can give you the scores for them. Shenmue 1. I gave Shenmue 1 6 out of 10. Oh, I gave Shenmue 2 6 out of 10 as well. Both took about 20 hours to complete, respectively. QTE action adventure life simulation type game. I played Yakuza Kiwami. That's gonna take its own episode as well. I'm very into this Yakuza series right now, thanks to Yakuza 0. So I want to get the second game, and subsequently the third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, essentially. So I have that to look forward to, which I'm very excited about. 26 hours to complete the story, plus a couple side missions. 10 out of 10. Loved it. Love the story, the Yakuza stories, and the side quests and everything about that world. Love it to the bone. Afterwards, I was kind of stuck with the games that I was playing. Didn't really want to play a story game. No, I didn't. So I played Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight. If you do not know, the Persona games are Japanese RPGs. They normally take about 100 plus hours to complete, 90 if you're good. They mix together a social simulator where you can grow friendships or relationships you have with the people around you, and that in turn helps with gaining skills and abilities for dealing with your dungeons and your castles, is what I would like to call it, palaces. So essentially there's the social simulator side where you're a student and you're kind of dealing with making friends, etc. and whatnot, and then there's the adventuring RPG side where you're traversing through levels in a dungeon to fight the boss, and it's a turn-based strategy. Very fun, very cool. I love the series. Persona 5 was my first one, so of course I have an attachment to Persona 5 itself. I have not finished 4 yet. I think about going backwards in time, but that might be a bad idea in terms of accessibility, because Persona 5 was a very accessible game in terms of how much they put the save rooms into each dungeon or each palace. But this dancing game, they normally take the IP of these characters and the whole series, or each specific game, and they make it a dancing game for you to enjoy. That being said, the Persona games, you don't have to play you don't have to play Persona 4 to understand Persona 5. They're all standalone games in their own respective game. I guess. And here's what I wrote. Just a fun little side game for the Persona 5 series. It's a rhythm game it's a rhythm game which has you hitting the corresponding button to the beat and the difficulty mode that has been set. A lot of nice remixes with the song. I totally fell in love with all the songs all over again. Like, I love the soundtrack to the Persona 5 series, like the acid jazz sound. It's so good. And if you haven't listened to my lyric analysis of Beneath the Mask, boy, that, I don't know, this series has like hit me really hard in terms of liking a game and like falling in love with a game. If you're a Persona 5 fan and love the music and the characters as much as I do, it's a nice easy buy it cheap if you would like. You can play dress up with the characters, have more interaction. There's more voice acting for the English people and the Japanese. You see the twins interact with everyone else, which is quite nice because you only see the twins interact with the protagonist. The dance animations are quite fun. It's just overall very good. It's a very fan servicey game in terms of, if you love Persona 5. It took me 7 hours to complete the main story. I did 100% that one. I platinumed that for PlayStation. I also platinumed Shenmue 1 and 2. We're going to talk about that some other time. But I platinumed this game. Not very hard to platinum. Very accessible if you want to platinum it. It was filled with a lot of fan service and the fact that they're in a dream. Yeah, so the basis of the game is that they were in a dream. And whatever happens in the dream, they'll forget when they wake up. But it's absolutely canon in terms of it happening because I don't know, it's canon, I guess. There's just one dream that out of nowhere happened that they're all thinking about, so it doesn't ruin the timeline of the game itself. Maybe the twins were kind of it's questionable if you finished the game. But it's a nice little cop-out in terms of making the game part of the timeline and part of the series instead of saying, like, they're just dancing. Like, it's a good framing device for the story inside the dancing game, which is not a lot of story. It's just more character development, essentially. The writing in the game is written in a way where your decisions are not influencing or have not influenced the game. So in Persona 5 or in the Persona series, you can romance a character, and in this game, they have not put any work. Not, I wouldn't say this isn't a negative, but it's a good way to write it. The way they wrote it was that your decisions in Persona 5 didn't affect the dancing game. You can still act the way you would like in terms of the game, but like the game save file wouldn't remember you romancing a specific person, is the thing to say. Essentially, Persona 5 Dancing in Starlight just made me want to play Persona 5 again, and it whet my appetite for the Royal Edition. This actually brought up an idea, because I was in the Persona 5 Reddit, and someone basically called everyone out for praising the creation of Persona 5 Royale. This could be another episode in itself, but just quickly, is it like maybe the practice that Atlas has in terms of developing games is actually bad, and maybe this guy telling us that we're sheeple isn't the worst thing in the world, because we probably are sheeple in terms of how we love the series. Anyway, the game, 10 out of 10. It took me 17 hours to complete. It's a rhythm dancing game. It's a beautiful game. You don't need to know how to dance. You just have to know how to press buttons on a controller. So getting down to it, one of the final 3 games that I've played. I played a bunch of old school PlayStation games. I bought the 3-piece set of PSP Greats, which was fun. I played Parappa the Rappa, Loco Roco, and I did not finish or have not finished Patapon. We'll start with Parappa the Rappa. It took me like 2 hours to complete the story. It was 5 out of 10. It's an old school PlayStation rhythm game with very old animation for the cutscenes, but the rest is updated for the PS4. All the songs except for Cheep Cheep was really nice and well done and tight and consistent in terms of play. That level, Cheep Cheep was such a bad level, and I was just only able to pass it by spamming the notes and the beat, and it apparently just worked. Like, it didn't matter if I missed it. All the other songs in terms of gameplay was good, but not gonna lie, Cheap Cheap drops them really hard. And Cheap Cheap just the level is just not well done in terms of how it is. One playthrough, 2 hours. It could have been less, but Cheap Cheap made it feel like forever. 5 out of 10. Good rhythm game. Not the greatest story of all time, but if you're going to look at the game in the perspective of when it was made and how it was like taken in, I can see it being a classic. I can see it being really good, and I had a good time. I didn't hate it at all. So 5 out of 10. Loco Roco. PSP remaster on the PlayStation 4. It's a physics-based puzzle platformer that has adorable characters and adorable music. It just lets you explore and collect little bits of things in a very relaxed and engaging way. The characters feel like plushies. The cute aesthetic just keeps you feeling like a child, and the way that the physics works is both frustrating and satisfying when figured out. Not much to say, but a nice little break from AAA titles or expensive games. It took me 6 hours to complete, 6 out of 10, because it was an above average game, and it was very, it hit me in terms of like the way the physics in the game works, because you are only allowed to press the shoulder buttons for the PlayStation R1, L1, and you have to tilt the screen to move your player blob around, and the level has different textures to it, like some are like jello blob stuff where you can bounce on it and it like gives you a better bounce. Some are solid, some are sharp, and just the way that the world interacts with the player character just felt really good. It felt really nice. It was a long enough game for me to feel like I had like a decent adventure with the game, and it was good. I can't say enough good things about the game. Not, a game breaker or the world's greatest game, but like such a good experience. If you find it for cheap at the PlayStation store, or if you find it in a PSP somewhere, man, go ahead and play that game. That's a good time. It's a good couple hours if you just want to sit down and play some mindless adventures while listening to a podcast or YouTube videos. And finally, the last game that I've played, game number 14, I think. Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14. Game number 14, The Last Guardian. 15 hours to complete my first playthrough. 7 out of 10. I'm going to film another episode in terms of... actually, the topic is right here. For The Last Guardian, I'm going to film an episode about playing with guides, and if playing with a guide is the wrong way to play games. Listen to that podcast to find out. Ha ha ha, pointing to another thing. But initial thoughts about the game is that it's really good. It's really well done. It was a beautiful story, really beautiful animations. Sure, my PlayStation shat itself a bunch in terms of the frame rate and all the details that was being pushed out into the game, but having a pet dog for an entire game, like the game is okay. So the basis of the game is you are a boy who's woken up in this temple, right? It's a temple, and there's a giant Trico beside you. Trico is an animal with it's basically a dog with wings and 2 horns, right? It's a cute creature, very adorable, and essentially you befriend this dog. You befriend Trico, and you just help each other get out of the tomb and escape the tomb. Not the tomb. Did I say it's a tomb? You escape essentially this area. It's not a tomb. I can't figure out what it's called. What's interesting is that Trico is an AI. Trico does things by itself, and you need to tell Trico what to do. But what's really nice is that it felt like an actual animal, because you don't have communication with Trico. The only thing you can do is say a thing or point or show a motion, and Trico will copy that motion. And half the time you have to just do the motion once, so Trico won't get frustrated with you and not do it, because if you keep spamming the thing, Trico will just not do it. It takes time for Trico to do your order or do what you're asking of him to do. because he's a pet. Like, he has his own frustrations, and the way that it was designed felt really good because I was so frustrated by this goddamn animal the whole time. Like, I can't. There's so many times where it like works perfectly, and I love Trico, and Trico's the best dog. But there's some times where Trico is just the worst piece of shit in the world, and I just wanted to spray him with something, but I don't have a spray bottle because it's ancient times, and it's an ancient dog creature. 7 out of 10, 15 hours. Really good experience. And that, my friends, that, dear listeners, have been all of the games that I've played so far in the year 2019. I will do another episode of this at the end of the year, or when I've played enough games. But 14 games within 7 months is a lot of games, and it just shows how much fucking time I actually had to do other things, but I chose to play games. No, playing games is fun, playing games is good. It's given me a lot of introspection in how storytelling is being told, and how the medium of video games is such a good medium. I have different episodes coming up for certain games. Like I said, there's going to be a Shenmue cast. There is going to be a bunch of Yakuza episodes coming out. I'm going to give you The Last Guardian and other games in terms of playing games with a guide, so look out for that. A lot of things in terms of how these games have made me think, and how I can create content with them, and how they've affected my life, essentially. Just on a final note, if there are any games you would like me to play, if you're out there and you're like, he should play this game because I think it's nice, or like, I want to hear his opinions about another game. First and foremost, thank you for wanting to hear my opinions about a game. And thanks for recommending a game if you'd like me to play a game. That has been the podcast. This has been Overanalyzing a Thing. This has been my games review for halfway through the year in 2019. Thank you so much for listening. You can listen to this podcast on a variety of places: YouTube, Spotify, hopefully iTunes at some point. Still trying to figure that out. Podbean, you can download it from there. SoundCloud is out of the question because I'm not going to pay for a SoundCloud thing. I'm poor. I don't have a job at the moment, so there's no way I'm going to do SoundCloud. Maybe when I start making money off of the podcast, or maybe I can do that as a Patreon thing in terms of paying for SoundCloud. Like, if I can get enough people to pay me on Patreon to put it on SoundCloud, then we'll keep it on SoundCloud. So yes, thank you so much, Jumbled Radio Online, for hosting this show. I have been your host, Julian Orahana. You can find me on the socials, Julian Orahana17 on everything, almost everything. That's on Instagram and Twitter. Julian Orahana on YouTube if you want to see my poetry videos. Rustling and Writing on Instagram, spelled WRUSSLINANDWRITING. For that, if you want to see some Instagram poems and a 30-day challenge. I've done 2 30-day challenges on that. Have I got anything else to show? Listen to the other casts. This has been Overanalyzing a Thing, or OATS. Go listen to a personal time or a personal talk elsewhere on the channel, elsewhere on the playlist, elsewhere on Podbean. Thank you so much for getting through this cast and listening to my opinions and my thoughts on games. Go play these games, man. If they're cheap and affordable and you've got time, I would suggest starting it and like coming back to it once a week or something. Most of these games are very good experiences. Thank you guys again so much for listening. I hope you guys have had a good time. I've helped you with your travels. Be safe, and I will hear you. You'll hear me again next time. This has no video. This has no visuals to it. It's a little post. Alright, goodbye.